Hold on.
It's so big on your head, which is what
I know.
Those bobbleheads. From Kiss, and we are live. This is the Artcasters show, filling in for Scott Serkland, who couldn't be here today. But we've got some great guests. A returning guest that was on last year around this time. We'll get to him in a minute. Some of the people you may or may not recognize because they're wearing masks, and I've been told that they're a little bit hot. So because of that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Cory first. Cory Kerr, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. A mask will work. It worked before. There we go. So yeah, Cory Kerr. You can find me at CoryKerr.com.
Let me see if I can throw that out here. Yes.
There we go. Yeah.
There we go.
My goodness.
Right. And Josh, what about you?
I'm a little nervous and honored to be having such a revered guest on the show.
You should be, but don't worry about it.
It's such a killer. Okay. Sorry. I'm gonna try to stay serious. I'm Joshua Kemble. You can pick up my first graphic novel, 2 Stories, on Amazon, or go to your local comic shop and request that they order it through Ingram. And 120-page graphic novel about faith and mental illness. It's hand lettered and hand inked, and that'll do it. The legend Gene Simmons.
So Gene Simmons, as you probably know, yes, I don't know why I'm reducing myself to being on the show, but here I am. You can find my stuff at kissonline.com. And just to let you guys know that right now, going on at this, well, not this very moment, I'm taking a night off to do this. I don't know why, once again, but it is our end of the road show, our farewell tour, our second farewell tour. But this is the second leg of our farewell tour. And so you can find us probably at any city near you. We'll be coming through town. And then after that, that's pretty much it. That's the last chance you will have to see Kiss live until our third leg of our farewell tour, which will commence, I believe, in 2023. And then that's it. You won't find us again unless, of course, you join us on one of our Kiss cruises, or we'll be doing a small stint in Vegas. But then that's it after that, unless, possibly we may, in maybe 2025, we may consider a fifth or fourth leg of our. I'm getting confused. I don't know how many we've done of that farewell tour. So really, you don't want to miss out. It may be your last chance to see Kiss. So definitely check us out. And with that, I'm going to introduce our guest for tonight. Let me see if I can pull up his information here. At sideshowmonkey.com. We got kind of a creepy looking guy over here. But under that creepiness, if I'm not mistaken, it's our good friend, David Hartman. Hey, David, how's it going?
Hello. All right, my eyes are making me nervous. It's like I'm trying to see you guys, and there's just this crazy eye going.
Those googly eyes, though, are like, that makes that costume. That makes
any costume. Any costume can benefit from googly eyes.
So David, what do you do, and where can everyone find you?
I am a illustrator for fun, do comics, but the main gig is directing and producing animated shows, directed a horror movie, Phantasm, do music stuff. I don't know, a little bit of everything.
Yeah, well, list a few of them if you don't mind listing a few, because you've got quite a pedigree.
Well, I got a few new shows for people to look forward to.
But I'll let you get a few of your projects in.
Okay, so I got Trese on Netflix, Trese. It's based off of a Filipino comic book, but I directed and storyboarded on that through a production company that I started with a few friends called Lex and Otis Studios. headed by my buddy Jay Oliva and Jojo Aguilar, and we're just a bunch of friends who decided let's take all of our years experience and make shows. So that was our first show, and now I'm directing on 2 Zack Snyder projects. Army of the Dead as was announced as an animated show, and then another project where I'm directing alongside with Zach and Jay Oliva. So pretty cool, fun stuff.
Very cool, very cool. Maybe we'll put together things in the animation space. We did a Kiss Scooby-Doo crossover.
Ooh, right.
It was kind of a remake in some respects to our original Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. We took some of those elements and introduced
I forgot about that. That was a good one, Gene.
If anyone hasn't seen Kiss Meets Phantom of the Park, really one of the milestones in cinematic history. Definitely check that out. But yes, we're always, the band and I are always doing more comics. We were groundbreakers when we introduced our Marvel comic, Kiss the Marvel comic, back in the 70s, where we used a drop of our own blood in the ink of the comic. And that is trademark, by the way. No one else is allowed to do that. But yes, we've been very involved in animation projects, like the aforementioned Kiss Scooby-Doo team up. But yes, we would love to do more. Kiss is right for just
all right. Let's do it.
Creative projects. So yes, definitely we'll have to talk after the show. But the reason why we're here tonight is because Halloween is coming up, and I hear in the Simmons household, pretty much every day is Halloween. But and I imagine it's probably a bit like that where you are, David. But really, we just want to talk a little bit about why we love this season so much, Halloween, and why we like horror flicks. My demon persona, as you know, is pretty much all inspired by horror and the like. So I'm very comfortable in this skin. And but I want to know, more from you, David. How did you get into this? Because you not just in your own personal projects, but also most. I know I've heard that you've done some stuff like Winnie the Pooh and things like that maybe not so horror, but for the most part, you are working a lot of horror projects, which perfect for this season. So why don't you tell us a little bit, go into why you enjoy horror and Halloween?
That is a tough one. I'm not totally sure. I mean, in a metaphysical way, it's a good way to release your demons and stress and pressure. But as a child, I was fortunate. My mom and dad. My dad would turn his hobbies into businesses, and he was a baseball card collector, right? And I was that nerdy kid that was not into sports, and I would just draw, cartoons all day. And then I learned about non-sports cards, and then we would go to flea markets, and he'd buy me boxes of comic books and stuff. And at a young age, I'm not sure totally why, but I wasn't gravitating towards Spider-Man and Iron Man and Batman and stuff. I was going more towards this plethora of comics that were in the box, which were like DC's House of Secrets and House of Mystery and stuff like that. And I really got into it because they were mainly short, compact stories, like a Twilight Zone episode, right? And there's always a little twist or a monster. And I freaking loved that as a kid. But I don't know if I told you guys this story on a previous podcast, but the earliest memory, because I have actually thought about this, and one of my earliest memories that I feel like shaped some of this was I went to the Ohio State Fair. I'm from Ohio, and my parents took me. I must have been like 7, 8 years old. And I remember back then you could just let your kids run wild, right? So they would just give me like a handful of quarters, say, go play, some games, try to win at darts or, popping balloons or win a goldfish or whatever. So they gave me a bunch of quarters, and they went off like wine tasting or something, whatever adults do. But I was going on the way to the game section, the arcade section, and I went past the freak show. Right. And it was back when they still had freak shows. It was like, had to been like 79, 78 when I was that, young kid. And it was at the last year. And I remember there was like a 2-headed cow and all this kind of stuff. But there was one thing that just blew my mind. It was this trailer, and it was just parked on the side. And it was like 25 cents. You can see Bigfoot frozen in ice and the world's smallest woman, which had like a painting of a hand on the side with like this Godiva naked woman with her hair covering herself, sitting in his hand. I was like, wow, I get to see Bigfoot plus a naked woman the size of my action figures. This is going to be awesome. So I paid my quarter. I go in, and there is this block of ice. It's freezing cold, and there's this creature in it, right? Which I, after researching and tracking down, it was this thing called the Minnesota Iceman, which has a cryptid history to it in itself. And it ran through Ohio, and there was, kind of this conspiracy. Was it real or not real? There were scientists who claimed to have researched it and stuff. But regardless, you can look that one up. But for me, that was like seeing a real monster, right? There's a real creature in ice, at least to a 7-year-old. When I went to go see the naked woman, it was actually like an 80-year-old woman who was really small, sitting on a pillow. And that was a kind of a disappointment at that young age. But, honestly, it was the Bigfoot thing that moved me. And I think that was one of the things that at least got me, I guess, looking outside of the norm for things a little bit. I was just fascinated that was there, and it was tangible, and it was in front of me. So, ever since then, I was just drawing monsters since I was a little kid. And I still have like comic books I made when I was that age that are, really crude and crayon. I remember I had one called The Exorcist 306, and it was like this creature constantly vomiting, but I drew it with red and blue crayon. So when you put on the 3D glasses, it kind of comes at you. I was pretty proud of that.
So awesome.
I've done a little bit of that myself.
But, it was that. And then one other time, my parents took me to a bookstore, and there was Fangoria magazine. It was Fangoria issue number 2. And it had from John Frankenheimer's Prophecy, which was this mutated bear. Was mutated by Mercury. Yeah, I loved that thing as a kid.
I think I loved the poster more than the movie. It was a great poster.
The poster's great with the egg, with the creature and the fetal creature. But that was on the cover, and it wowed me because it reminded me of this thing that I thought I saw at the fair. And I begged my mom to get me, that magazine, which, is full of gore and all kinds of great stuff. And, my mom was great. She got it for me. And, that kind of put me on this path of horror and sci-fi, but, a lot of the weird stuff. And I don't know, I still draw monsters today because I loved how that felt when I was a kid, and I just don't outgrow that, and I still love that stuff.
And now correct me if I'm wrong, but your backdrop this isn't something you set up for Halloween. This is like a year.
Yeah, no, this is all year long. And I don't know, let me see if you can see. I got right there's a Bigfoot cast. You see that?
Yes.
I got a Bigfoot cast. Like, I got old vintage masks up there.
Let's see, I was just
all monsters.
We've got a friend Squatchy, but I don't see him in the chat, but he's a big Bigfoot fan as well. Maybe he'll watch this on the replay and be jealous of you for that, because that's pretty cool. So I guess I'll tell a little story myself. Actually, I'll relay a story for Scott, who couldn't be here. I'll just kind of do it as if I were him. But from my understanding, the way he tells it, that a big part of just the horror in general, because and you know, with horror and superhero comics and all that, but Kiss, of course, why not? But Kiss was a big influence on him as well, because of there are, at least in my persona, the Demon, there were definitely some horror elements, but as superheroes, you know, going back to there's a lot of crossover, because going back to like the early figures with we had a line, you know, Kiss had a line of Mego figures. There were also a line of Mego figures for the Universal Studios classic monsters, and there's just a lot of crossover with that. But you know, for a lot of young people like Scott, you know, Kiss was an introduction to some of that stuff that really, at the age he wasn't really something that he didn't really even listen to the music, is my understanding. It was more, they were more of a persona that he was into, and later he discovered the music and he was better for it, I'm sure, because, you know, it's Kiss. But really, the thing that I'm trying to get to is there's so many of these little crossover little elements, whether it's Kiss or whether it's Universal Studios monsters, whether it's Ben Cooper style costumes, whether it's any number of things that happened around in the, you know, late 70s, early 80s, that informed Scott with, you know, why he likes to do, probably not to the extent that you, David, are into horror, but still, you know, there was a time where he really branded everything as robots, aliens, zombies, and other imminent threats to humanity.
Yeah.
And that all came from his love of horror. At least that's my understanding. And sci-fi and even sci-fi horror. I mean, I remember him relaying to me that Alien, seeing that at such a young age,
Oh, yeah.
and
Alien.
you know, one of the scariest, and still I think is one of the scariest movies ever committed to cinema. Maybe not to the quality of Kiss Meets Phantom of the Park, but still up there. But you know, so yeah, there's a lot of those type of things. Does any of that? I don't know if any of that resonates with you. As far as, do you have any of those things, like for instance, like the Universal Studios monsters, Ben Cooper costumes, all of that type of stuff. There you go. Yes, Frankenstein.
This whole wall over here is nothing but Frankenstein. That's like.
So what was your first, if you can remember, what was your first introduction to Frankenstein? Was it the Universal Studios? Was it?
No, it was Universal Studios, and it was Saturday afternoon, you know, 12 o'clock TV shows in Chicago. We had, well, I was from Ohio, but we get the Chicago WGN channel with this super host, and he would play, you know, Saturday afternoon horror movies, and, you know, Frankenstein was one of the first. And again, for me, it's always the human element of Frankenstein, that he's sympathetic as well, which I love. You know, so that there's that, but you know, all of the Ben Cooper masks, I mean, all that stuff is pretty much everyone that loves horror is, you know, encompasses themselves with the vintage side of horror, which, you know, is so great. I still, you know, have the paper cutouts of the cat creatures and pumpkin creatures and stuff. I don't know. There's just a real fun feeling to it, but there's the sinister dark side to it too, right? Which is, you know, I love the cutesiness and then, you know, the horror.
Yeah. So with all of that history, just to inform sort of what you do now on a professional level, outside of the day job as an animator, storyboard artist, director, animation director, storyboard artist, and doing comics on the side. Outside of that, when it comes to this season, you know, Halloween, how do you celebrate? Do you have any rituals that you do, or is there anything?
Yeah, whenever we're not in, you know, crisis on the planet, we decorate the house completely up, and, you know, every year I can remember I do a full dress up. So we would do with my daughter, who's someone that I make costumes with. She has a lot of fun with it. So it keeps me young too. And that we'll just like make masks together, or we'll make costumes together. And every other year we make a new costume that we plan. And then the odd years, we will wait till probably about 10 minutes before Halloween starts. And then I have a big costume closet full of stuff. And we mix and match and create creatures, which is like kind of like, remember that old monster, the monster maker, where you would have plates that you put in and you rub the crayon
It was
over
one
it.
of those, what were those called? They weren't color
relief
forms. Yeah. But they
had like
the
different
plastic-
plates, like different
yeah.
legs, different torsos, different
Yeah.
heads. You'd switch them up and rub the crayon over them.
Yes, I think exquisite corpse is probably the term you're looking for. Yeah, it was kind of an exquisite corpse where you take the head, the body,
Yep.
and the feet.
The
and
three sections.
Yeah.
those were
That's,
great. I remember. Yes, I had those. Yes, those were
Yeah.
awesome.
So we try to do that, and then we don't decorate the house ahead of time. What I do is, this is, I don't know, just the weird side of things that we've been doing for 20 years, but we don't decorate the house until around 6:00 Halloween night. So that's when, in my mind, the kids go and they're having dinner, getting ready for trick or treat. Our house has been normal the whole time. When they come out from dinner, all of a sudden our house is decked up. It's all lit. There's scary music, monsters. And then after trick or treat, even though I'm super tired, I take it all down. So in the morning, the house is back to normal. It's just that one section of the year, It's
So you did mention this, I think, in the last time we did this,
Yeah.
but I did not ask, and I'm very curious. How do you do that? How do you, in a matter of hours, how do you transform your house?
it's a group effort. The wife, the kid, but we have our stuff. It's all boxes, and I got there's the certain go-to, right? Your lights, I got them all. Know how I'm going to set all the lighting up, the fog machine, and we do a theme every year. But I'm also in California, right? The yards aren't exactly that big, so it doesn't take too long.
I love that, and I will say, for anybody who's like, we've had David on the show quite a few Halloweens now, which is pretty exciting, and I think should be a tradition. But it's I will encourage people, just definitely make sure you check out some of David's like costumes and stuff, because like the costumes he's describing making with his daughter, and like the way he's describing like setting up his house, this isn't your average like person putting together a costume. These are like immaculately, like almost movie ready costumes. They're really great. So like that googly eyed kind of mask you saw at the intro is like a hint at like the kind of stuff that
that was just that was a Sunday afternoon. Hot glue, and come on, those eyes are awesome.
They are amazing. I love those googly
Everything
eyes.
needs googly eyes.
I have to imagine that living in LA, being in the entertainment industry, are there others that participate on the level that you do in your neighborhood?
More so, way more so than I do. Yeah, I mean, out here. Well, when I first moved out here, this is a funny story too. It's like coming from Ohio, it seemed like everything was haunted, and that was just a part of the landscape, right? Coming out here, I was like, oh my gosh, every house, what are these weird Taco Bell tiled roofs and stuff, like, it threw me. So we did my first, real year when I got my first house. I was like, oh, we're doing Halloween up. And we did our version of the Universal Monsters. I got, about 8 or 9 friends over, and we did this like wild, crazy time. And afterwards, all the neighbors came out and clapped for us. And none of the neighbors did Halloween. It was like, I couldn't believe, like, nobody was celebrating this. And then after that, it was actually kind of cool. My neighbors around started doing it up, where they surpassed me with, their full on animatronics and, and their fog machines. And to me, that's just awesome, where the whole street is up, and it's a safe place for kids to just walk in the street going house to house, which is, again, it was how it felt like when I was a kid, right? And the worst thing that we had as kids was make sure that if you get an apple, it doesn't have razor blades in it, right?
Yeah.
We've all had that story, but it's just capturing that magic and stuff again that for me, it's always chasing the childhood and that feeling, that rush I would get in Halloween.
That's really cool because Scott was relaying. He wanted me to tell this story on air, but it's cool when you can actually rope your neighbors in, and like you said, sometimes they do surpass you. But he was telling the story how when he first moved into his neighborhood, he lived across from a cul-de-sac, and he got everyone involved, and they would have these big block off the cul-de-sac and have these big Halloween parties, and then one by one, unfortunately, people started moving away. But recently, he, actually it wasn't him this time who initiated it, but some of the other neighbors in the cul-de-sac, the new people who had moved in, were getting together and kind of invited him over, and then it started all over again. So it's kind of back to the way it was, but
really, it's a new generation of kids,
exactly,
right? That come in.
And too, I mean, a lot of times it's just your typical, there are trick-or-treaters and everything, but the adults are out there, their drinks and stuff, and conversing and things that adults do while, passing out candies. And Scott also passes out comic books because, of course.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so it is great to see others get involved and everything, and then try to one up themselves or each other. It's just great. But I just realized we've been going for about 20 minutes, or a little over 20 minutes, and in about 15 of those minutes, I haven't promoted anything. So right now, I just want to tell you more about the KISS Cruise. Now, the KISS Cruise can be a little pricey, but we don't want to leave anyone out. So we do have a lower price if you can't afford the KISS Cruise. Right now, what we're doing is we will send Vinnie Vincent out to your house and sit in your bathtub with you for 30 minutes. And that's the price of that is just like $200. So that is an option. So we are trying to create different. Now that's Sans makeup, and if anyone isn't familiar with KISS, Vinnie Vincent briefly took over for Ace Frehley after he left, and for a briefer period of time, actually had makeup and the persona of what we call the Ankh warrior, which was more of an Egyptian type warrior. Makeup design. Now, if you want the makeup, it's a little extra. That'll be around $500. But we can. He's really not with the band anymore, so he could use the money. Of course, we're going to take about 90% of that money, but still, it's still a good thing for him. So now that I've got that out of the way, I just want to kind of go around the room and ask some of the other members of the Artcasters sort of what their experiences growing up with Halloween and if that informed anything that they do. So I guess I'll start with Josh. Josh,
Yes.
Go ahead.
So yeah, I mean, I relate a lot to sort of like at a young age. I think one of the appeals of horror is like, I think David kind of nailed it by saying it's kind of like there's something charming about it and kind of almost adorable even about horror. I know that's weird, but it's like there's something really quaint and kind of quirky and corny about it. But it's like, but you can sincerely be into it. Like you don't have to like, be in it like tongue in cheek. You can sincerely enjoy like a bad movie, or like kind of enjoy the idea of like sort of being in costume or being a different character and stuff. And I think like there is something about that sort of line between the spooky and the absurd and sort of the fun of it, like where it, like my favorite kind of horror kind of asks you to like step into a bit of suspension of disbelief that's like ridiculous, you know? And I love that. Like, I love being in a scenario where you have to kind of suspend disbelief. So like,
Yeah.
but for me, most of my horror love comes from like when I grew up. Like I grew up in a weird family that watched like old movies a lot, like black and white silent films and like
Awesome.
artsy old classics and stuff. And so like I was obsessed with like, I mean, obviously Twilight Zone reruns and stuff, and like Hitchcock was just like this incredible thing. And I remember watching Nosferatu, and that's like the first movie I ever got scared of. Like, which by the way, I rewatched like a couple years back, and I still rewatch it every once in a while. But the original Nosferatu is like still to this day like one of the most chilling movies.
Oh, it's really creepy. Yeah,
yeah, it's
just
like,
it being a silent film just makes it even better.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah, and I mean, if you have like good kind of authentic music with it, so you got like that you know classic like silent movie organ with it, it's just there's something spooky about it. But yeah, like and then in comics, I always liked it because you know my family was kind of conservative and stuff, and growing up, like luckily they have not remained so. But so like we weren't allowed to watch a lot of stuff, and comics were like my one outlet to be able to kind of explore horror, like legit horror, you know. So like I remember, you know, like Tales from the Crypt and like all those old EC comics and stuff, stumbling upon those in like a dollar bin, at my local comic shop, and not only getting the joy of like David was describing, the cool thing is like unlike a lot of comics, like they weren't generally serialized, and even if they were serialized, they still would have a complete ending, so it had a beginning, middle, and end, which is really great for comics.
You could jump in anywhere and just
you didn't feel like you had to go to like back issue 1 to like or go to issue 563 of this other title that's similar to like find out what's happening in the story, you know. And so like yeah, it was a cool way to kind of explore stuff that I like, you know, to kind of get away with reading stuff that I don't think my parents would have been down with me reading. But like, because it was a comic, it's like, it's a comic, it's harmless. And I got to read this like awesome, like bloody, gory stuff, which I actually think, I always joke, but I think they're, especially for like young boys, like they're gonna hit a stage where they have to read like just super gory stuff. Like even now, like there's stuff I would have been into as a kid that I'm not anymore as an adult. Like that was, and I don't mean like a very little kid, but like mid kid, I guess. There's stuff now that I wouldn't even tolerate like now, because I'd just be like, I don't really want to watch like that. But at the time, like the gorier, the more violent, like the better. And it just fed this weird thing that I think boys have. Like, and I think it's important for things like that to be out there. Like, weirdly enough, like a good example of that now, I was doing a signing at a comic shop, and I want to pass it to Cory after this, but I was doing this signing at a comic shop, and I had been wanting to check out Red Room, and they had copies of Red Room by Ed Pixor, or Piskor, and I thumbed through it, and then I read like 3 of the issues, and I was just horrified. Like it's brutal and violent and gory, and it's like, and I realized I'm so glad this is out there, and I know that's weird to say because I don't even know if I'd buy it, but I'm glad it's out there, and I kind of like think my son's gonna hit an age, not right now, not while he's like 8, but if he's in like junior high and he came across like the Red Room, and I caught him reading that or something, I'd be like, all right, cool. You know what I mean? Because that's,
but it is a release for I believe it's a natural and important way to, again, get your demons out. Most of the people I know in the horror industry are like the nicest freaking people I've ever worked with, right? And it's because most people get all their crap out on screen, you know, and
100%. And the other thing is like, that's the other thing. Like there's this weird perception of people who do horror by people who've never been around people who do horror, you know, but it's like, it's kind of like the perception of like horror punks. Like people always get freaked out by that. And then it's like, you listen to horror punk, and a lot of it's like really sappy, like hard on its sleeve music, but it's just
Yeah.
but it's like really like cool and mysterious and dark and awesome. So like so yeah, that's kind of my angle into it. And then of course as I got into punk rock and like I had my Misfits thing, like and it's like that gets you into a whole different world of horror. But like I love the weird feeling. Like the best I could explain it is like if you were walking in like a dark area of like New Orleans, there's like this creepy beauty to the whole thing, but you never know what's around the corner.
Yeah.
It's like
history,
that.
there's some history that took place here and you don't know what that is.
Yeah, I just love that feeling, and I think that's what makes me like horror. Plus monsters and anatomy are super fun to draw. So if anybody's curious why like artists draw zombies and like rotting bodies and all this crazy stuff, it's like it's super fun to draw. It's like way more interesting to draw than
that's what I'm drawing now.
Yes,
there's some dead guys.
I love it. So yeah, I don't know, Cory. What about you?
Before we get to Cory, so David, we got a few questions. I was sleeping on the chat, so Squatchy is actually in the chat, and he says hi. Yes,
but I see Keith Harper said Mighty Men and Monster Maker. That is the thing I had.
Yes, and also he was asking if you're familiar with Svengoolie in Ohio.
I didn't. I did, but it wasn't part of my time. I think I got Superhost from Chicago, and that was kind of the thing that encompassed my. But I know of Svengoolie for sure.
Yeah, I've seen clips and everything, but where I grew up.
Yeah, but I didn't grow up with it.
Yeah. All right, so Cory, now you are sort of a fan of a different kind of horror, I think, which is like real life horror, technology taking over and destroying the world. But other than that,
I find my anxiety drives me to imagine reality being much more terrifying than cinema. So, I never really got into it too much. I mean, I like drawing skulls and stuff. I think that's really fun. I think like Franco Francavilla, he does all those Mondo posters and everything, and like the style and the aesthetic and the like the coloring of a lot of those kind of B movie posters. I'm really into like the illustrated movie posters of like the 60s, 70s, and 80s they're so rad.
They really are.
But I really don't like I don't like gore, and so I'm into like suspense and drama and stuff. But I'm not a big fan of horror itself. I remember even reading as a kid. I think I read like it's probably like a Goosebumps, or something, and like I felt so creeped out that I like couldn't sleep all night, and so like I never read anything like that again. Like I just I was imagining because I was a very literal kid a lot of the ways, and I remember in the story, there's this girl that's supposed to be dead and she's not dead, and she goes to this party, and this kid's like, that smells like formaldehyde, and I couldn't get that out of my head. Like I was like trying to make that work. Like, is the formaldehyde in her circulatory system? Is it like, and I just like I kept like going around and like all night I was just like totally creeped out. So I think like, Nickelodeon, Are You Afraid of the Dark and Goosebumps is probably as hardcore as I got growing up. So, but I like the aesthetic. I'm just not a huge fan of I don't know. I think my mind just runs away with it and makes it way worse than the actual.
Right.
Oh man.
All right. So let's see. Let's go back to David then. So I think people might be a little interested in how your journey took you out to LA, how you got involved in working in the animation industry, and finally, and I assume it probably wasn't this way from the beginning, but finding your footing and kind of what you actually like and getting to work on these different horror projects. Because I I have to imagine in animation that maybe few and far between, and in the whole of animation in general.
Yeah, which is changing now. Sorry, dropped my pen. I feel like it's changing now, but when I came out, when I was in college, I took animation classes. Even in high school, I got out of, I believe it was a science class and a history class, because I knew kind of that I wanted to go into art. So I did this vocational study at this place called Character Builders. Again, was in Ohio, who was an animation studio, which was run by Jeff Smith, who went on to do Bone. But they brought me on just kind of as this vocational thing to kind of shadow them and watch what they do. And they're, had me painting cells, for like some Little Mermaid 2 or something. And I just remember thinking, I hate animation. Like to me, it was just like painting cells, drawing the same thing over and over. I always, even though I'm always drawing zombies, it's always a fresh take in my mind, each time. I'm not trying to draw what I drew before. And there is an art to being on model and being able to basically follow your own lines and structure you did in the frame before, but that's not where my strengths lie. And I was like, man, this isn't for me. And I was torn in that I just didn't have any clue of what I was going to do or how I could make a career in art besides maybe doing illustrations for like cereal boxes or, stuff of that magnitude, because that was big. In Ohio, that seemed like the best thing that there was to offer was like commercial advertising art. But everybody who graduated was fighting for that job. And I knew I was like inferior over many of my peers and my friends who were great draftsmanships and painters and technique and illustrators.
Well, I mean, to be fair, if any of us, like in our first art job, was working with Jeff Smith, I think we'd feel pretty inferior, right?
Yeah. But it was just like I just had no freaking clue what I could do. His comic books, I was being told I constantly got to work on my anatomy, or you draw more like Jim Lee, draw more like Todd McFarlane, and I was like, I want to draw my own stuff, and it didn't look like either of those, but it also wasn't necessarily palatable for the big two, Marvel or DC Comics, who were really the ones that were the comics that could pay the bills, right? Yeah. And again, I longed for those EC days that I would read about, with Jack Davis and Will Elder, like all these guys, who were getting to draw these horror comics. But horror comics, when I was a kid, weren't necessarily being made anymore. There were House of Secrets and all that stuff, but it was petering out, right? And then there was Ghost Rider and Swamp Thing and stuff. But I just said, okay, comics, I'm not sure if that'll turn into a job. That's going to be more of a passion. And then maybe illustration. But then one of my buddies who I met in high school, he was a good friend, he moved out to California, and I missed him, and we would talk all the time. And he was telling me he was working at Malibu Comics at the time, and he left Malibu to go do this storyboarding thing in animation, which I took a couple storyboarding classes in college, but it's like commercial storyboarding, right? Which was like, here's a panel, it's a kid with the cereal bowl. Here's another panel, it's mom smiling, and there was this fast turnaround, but decent money. But it was still kind of this almost clinical, sterile drawing, textbook type drawing. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's what I failed at. I can't draw that. And, he tells me about the storyboarding thing, and I got the job, right? And then I think I've told you guys this in a past one, but you know, they gave me like 48 hours, 24 hours to get to California, right? And I've never been, you know, out of the state really, you know, except for like going to Florida or something. And, you know, I had to pack up my life basically and say goodbye to my girlfriend and my friends, all on this idea of I need a job, a career in art, or I'm not gonna, you know, like it's an opportunity. I have to at least try it, right?
Yeah.
If it fails, I have a safety net. I have family and stuff I can come back to. So why not try? And it was my buddy, and I could stay with him. He helped me get this job, and then I learned more about storyboarding. And you know, up to this time, I've been making short films since like 6th grade, 5th grade, when my parents got a video camera, and I've made hundreds of these like monster films and all that stuff, you know. And you know, at the time there was the glamour of being a director. Like, what did that mean? And it's an impossible goal, right, for a small town kid. And then I went to this job doing storyboarding, realizing, wow, I actually get to tell the stories. I'm choosing the shots to tell the story. But not only that, I control the actors. I give them the emotion that you need. And then, you know, I'm doing things where it's like, wait, I don't have to take that to final. I don't have to do the clean line, the technique that sucks. I need the underdrawing, and it needs to give emotion. And it's like, wow, that's what I do. Once I put ink on my drawing, I lose all the emotion, or at least that's how it was for me at the time, right? And then you learn about, you know, what we call posing out, you know, where you're doing basically the key drawings in an animation. They'll animate the in-betweens and stuff, but I'm kind of like the punch, how to draw the Marvel way, right? You got it back here, and then you got it here, right? The animators will animate overseas all the in-betweens, but I got to frame up the shots to look right and tell the story. And, you know, I got into that doing revisions, they call it, like, you know, where I was cleaning up after other storyboard artists and just cleaning up their work and tightening things up or making changes. And then they moved me up the storyboards, and that was on, I started out on Extreme Ghostbusters. Anyone remembers that show? Which was a lot of fun, because I mean, that's horror, right? It's kid fun horror, but there was a lot of monsters and had a cool style, and that was fun. And then they moved me up to storyboards, and then my next show was Godzilla, which, you know, like, that's a whole nother story, because Godzilla means so much to me as a kid. But like Godzilla, you know, I got to work on that. It's monsters, right? So then I ended up, there's like 40 episodes, and I ended up storyboarding on more than half of them, right? And I was really fast. I found out, you know, I thought I just didn't, I thought I was slow, but I guess I was fast. So they moved me up to director, and they liked my shots and how I was telling the stories. So they gave me a shot of that, and it was on Starship Troopers CGI show. Again, getting to draw cool monster bugs and stuff, right? Winnie the Pooh didn't come till later down the line, which was actually a personal choice, because I love Winnie the Pooh, for one.
Yeah, Winnie the Pooh's rad.
The innocence of it. I had a daughter who was like 2 years old, who also loved Winnie the Pooh, and I could be a hero for her, and I could bring her to our cast recordings and let Jim Cummings, who would do the voice of Tigger and Pooh, you know, play her Winnie the Pooh action figures with her and stuff. And, you know, I actually had a lot of fun on that, because it was such a departure from what I normally do. For me, that was a challenge, right? And I've had people make fun of me, like, oh, Winnie the Pooh, it's a kid's show. Let me tell you, that's a lot of work, because there's a lot of emotion that you got to put in the characters. You got to keep it fun. It was a challenge. It really was. But I was proud of the result. And during that same time is when Rob Zombie saw my work, because I was drawn on at the evenings, maybe because I was drawing Winnie the Pooh all day. I'd have to go home and draw my monsters, right? And, stay true to who I am. And Rob saw those and then gave me some work animating 2 of his music videos, which at the time I wasn't. I'm an animation director. I'm an animation storyboard artist, but I don't draw the frame by frame, right? So that was a bit of a challenge for me. But again, Rob gave me an awesome push, right, in the horror world. And during that same time, I met Don Coscarelli, director of Phantasm, but Beastmaster, Bubba Hotep.
So good.
And Beastmaster I grew up with, again, because it was on HBO like every hour and a half when I was a kid. And getting to meet him was fantastic, because that Fangoria issue 2 that I brought up before with the Prophecy Bear had a big thing in there about Phantasm, and it had this cut off finger, in a box, and it had this kid floating in front of a red sky, and it freaked me out. And it's weird to think full circle that now I get to meet with this guy, get to work with him. He saw my artwork. He loved my artwork and stuff. And I showed him a couple of my short films that I was doing, with monsters and stuff. He's like, "Oh, you do some effects stuff?" I was like, "Well, just out of necessity." And he's like, "Oh, can you do wire removal?" I was like, "Yeah, I could totally do it. I can do wire removal." He leaves the office, and then I'm like, "How to do wire removal? I don't know how to do this." But again, it was an opportunity, and I knew I could do it. I just needed to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
But again, that was another entry into the horror world where he became a good friend, and eventually we, co-wrote Phantasm Ravager, and he, allowed me to direct it and stuff. And it's really weird to even talk about this now, because even in my mind, it's like, oh, these are all cool things. How did I pay bills? Like how's this a job? But I did Transformers Prime on HBO, which is on Netflix.
Which, by the way, my son is like a massive fan of that show.
Oh, really?
Because it's so good. I mean, it's awesome. Just, it was so well done.
I'm so proud of that show. And Jeff Klein, the producer, brought me on, and that's like a real highlight of my career. And it was like 8 years of my life working at Hasbro in Burbank at the animation studio. But, that was a lot of work. But I'm so proud of it. Yeah. Now, of course, all the childhood memories I'm telling you, I'm happy to tell you and get them on, YouTube or wherever, because my memory is completely erasing with Transformers lore that was pumped into me for those 8 years, and ruined. Massive childhood memories are now deleted. But, to get back to the horror aspect, I've been really fortunate that a lot of, at the beginning, the things that were thrown my way were things I was passionate about anyhow, right? It might have been different if I started on Polly Pockets than if I actually had the chance to be on Ghostbusters, and people are like, wow, this kid loves to draw monsters, let's give him this other section. Let's give him this chance on Godzilla, because I knew the Godzilla world and the Godzilla movies and how the monsters fight and what shots you use to sell that, right? And I've been really fortunate with that. And now in modern times, with my buddies, and we kind of have this studio that we are starting, we're getting to do shows that we like, and bringing, to go back to Trece on Netflix as Filipino, based off the Filipino comic book. I'm really proud of this, not only about the lore that we're in the Filipino culture and everything. But you know, I was really proud of my directing on it and stuff. So take a look at that if you haven't already. There's a lot of horror. It's monsters and supernatural stuff. So it's really fun, you know. And then that's led to Army of the Dead with Zack Snyder and all these other things. So you know, I'll keep it going. I've been very fortunate. I've been able to make a living out of it. But you know, and then I still do comics on the side for fun, but they're all horror.
I love that though, and you've talked about some of this on the show prior, but it's like I feel like the one thing I love about your story and your journey as an artist is like the things you were passionate about, you're naturally pursuing. So like things you were doing for fun, when opportunities came up, like you actually had those things to kind of show. So it's like,
absolutely,
you know, the like hundreds of movies you're making just for fun on your own end up being a thing that can inform and help you on the next thing.
Absolutely. And Josh, I still do those short films because it's the time to experiment. I don't have to show them to anybody. If they suck, I don't have to show anyone. But when I'm doing those storyboards and I'm like, how am I going to do this? Wait, I did this really cool shot by accident this one time, and that would work great here, you know? And that helps, you know, you just got to keep hammering at it. But, you know, even talking about it now, part of it, I think, is me just not saying no to a deal until all the cards are on the table, right? So, you know, don't sell yourself short if you have an opportunity because you're like, I don't know how to do that. Just know that you can. If you are comfortable in that, you're like, I could if I just had the resources available to me, right? Like, because those are much easier. It's much easier to come across resources than it is talent or the gumption, I guess, to do it.
Yeah.
You know,
that's something I've noticed with so many successful creatives is if you do enough personal work, you come to realize that if you don't know how to do something, you can probably figure it out. And you have a good sense for like the scale of that, like the wire removal thing. Like you kind of instinctively knew that was something that you could figure out. It's not like somebody asked you like, oh, do you know how to do 3D wireframe modeling? And you're like, oh yeah, sure. Yeah. You know, it's not like an entire discipline. It was like a skill, you know. Yeah, I pick up skills.
And it was a very specific skill, Cory, in that I didn't have to learn all of After Effects. Right. I just need to learn how to do wire removal in After Effects.
Right.
The rest will come as jobs demand it, right?
Right.
So, and I felt the same with Photoshop. Photoshop, like my daughter's taking Photoshop classes now, and it's kind of like, don't be overwhelmed by all the tools that are there. You don't have to use them all.
Yeah.
They're not meant to all be used at once, you know? So use the tools you want to tell the kind of art you want to do. Watch tutorials, you know, and you might pick up on other things, but, you know, just don't be overwhelmed by stuff. I say that and I'm overwhelmed every day. But
oh sure, but I think
still,
that's the secret of doing personal projects for fun is like you have to figure it out for that shot. You have to figure out, you know, what I mean. The story demands that you know how to draw this or shoot this or edit this. You figure it out.
Storyboards is like you have to draw poses you would never be comfortable drawing normally, right? Because some of them are just instances of a moment where your arm is in this really weird position and there's a lot of foreshortening and you got to make it work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's got to work in animation. And, you know, again, in hindsight, I took the right paths, I think, on a lot of things to help with the type of drawing I was doing at the time, which is I sucked at going to a finished technique. I sucked at, you know, having the discipline of sitting there and inking forever, all that, I found this job that allowed me to do what I love, which was just sitting there drawing like a little kid, doing these drawings and cool poses, right? And then I could go to the next one and do the next cool pose. And it's kind of like life drawing, right? Doing your 30-second, 10-second sketches where you just get those lines down, the minimal lines. And that works fantastic for storyboards, right? Because you're drawing these weird poses, but you're also like, all of a sudden you got to draw horses, right? Running, and you kind of got to have a basic understanding of just not just human anatomy, but just anatomy in general, how to, you can fake a lot of it, especially in storyboards, because it's not hung up in a museum where it's going to be scrutinized. You just need the lines to tell the story. And maybe it's like magic that you only give them what they need to see, right? You're not drawing the backside of a character. You're just drawing this 3/4, and maybe the nose is not perfect, the eyes are off a little, but is the emotion in the shot? Because you're telling a story. The animation will go overseas, and it's their job to put it what we call on model. It's their job to draw it to look like that model. It's your job to get the emotion across in that drawing. And again, that's what I loved to do.
Yeah.
And it's just taking that next level. Now, as I've grown older, because I knew those were my weaknesses, I've worked on my technique. I've worked on my painting, and I've worked on all these things. And, took a long time to get comfortable with just jumping in. And to be honest, it's this thing that allowed me to go to the next level in my own personal art, because I liked painting and stuff, but I didn't like getting messy. I didn't like getting stuff out because it means I have to put it away. That's too much work. And with this thing, I could just sit and experiment like crazy, right? And Photoshop was that now. But my thing with Photoshop is I have to sit in an uncomfortable chair. I'm hunched over. My back is hurting. This thing just allows my butt to sit back in a big leather chair, put this thing on my belly and just draw, which is great. That's what I love.
And you were saying before the show how you actually managed to convince the people that when you're at your day job that you don't need an office or anything. All you need is
need a big chair. Just give me a big chair. I can just work back. And honestly, my production level when I'm like that just goes way up. I'm whether it's you're relaxed or what, but I just become more confident with my line work, and I'm able to knock stuff out faster. So I don't know. That's just something I found along the way. And again, it's feeling like that 8-year-old kid in a big chair, sitting in a chair with drawing paper and markers. And, that's when I was my most creative. Right. So I always try to capture that again.
Yeah. It's a lot like Josh and Cory. I mean, they've got both creative day jobs, and then they come home and, Cory, we'll be doing a show and Cory's sitting there. He'll have a finished animation before, because he's tried to kind of rope Scott into that.
Awesome.
And it was like, that's a lot of work, but watching him and how he's managed to streamline it all, it's pretty amazing. And then of course, much like you with, you waking up early and working on your comic, Josh comes home from work and works on his. It's just like a daily ritual. So definitely a lot of common ground, and something for maybe folks out there in the chat or people who are watching, who either work a creative job. I know Gary's in the chat also has a creative job and also works on his comic on the side, but it can be done, and I think it just, because, I hear a lot of complaints here and there that, there's just not enough time or whatever. But
if you love something, you'll
exactly,
you'll always find the time. If you can find the time not to draw and play a game or something, that's okay. But just know that's what you're passionate about at that moment, right?
Yeah.
But if you are passionate about drawing and stuff, do it. Now for Cory and Josh, I mean, like for me, at least at the very beginning, this was difficult. Now I've come to terms with it, but you know, like you gotta have this disconnect between the day job and your personal work.
Yeah.
Like I do, to not get burned out, right? That if I'm not having a good time at work, I'm like, well, at least I can go home and draw my comic today,
Yes.
right? Or you know, you gotta have that outlet. So for me, it was like, okay, I'm drawing so much at work, I wasn't able to draw at home, right?
Yeah.
I'd find out I'd get grumpy and stuff. So I had to make time to just draw my fun stuff, you know?
So I relate to that so much because when I first started art directing, it was so overwhelming from like compared to just the design aspect of stuff, and not art directing and animation, thank God, but because that's even more work. But
it uses your brain and it emotionally drains you.
Yeah, and it's more like there's a lot of like people were like working with teams and like running the team and like sort of facilitating like people getting along and like sort of mediating, and a lot of like skills you don't necessarily always have to have like on the floor of the team. Like when you're in the bullpen, it's like overseeing the bullpen's a little different. So that overwhelmed me for like a few years. But I totally found exactly what you were saying, where it's like I started getting annoyed by like certain projects because inevitably like a client project that I don't like is going to come up, you know, and I'm going to do the best I can on that project. But I found myself getting really like just frustrated at everything regarding what I was doing professionally, because I wasn't doing the thing that I knew I should be doing as an artist. And so I like the second I started actually just committing and getting back into making my graphic novels, it's like exactly like you described, no matter how good or bad the day is at work, it's a lot easier to separate because I have my own outlet and I have my own stories. Because even working on really cool stories by other people, I think if you're a creative who wants to tell stories, like you're inevitably going to be wanting your own voice to be able to be out there. And I think that's the great thing about, but the cool thing is it also feeds the day job because you'll try things creatively, kind of like what you were just describing with your career path, where it's like, you'll make a short film or you'll try this weird thing. And then the next thing you know, an opportunity pops up. And now you have this weird skill that you didn't even know you needed.
Yeah, exactly. Even doing the comics for fun for me, like working, like I'm doing my comics all digital, right? And I built my own brushes and all this, but I'm always experimenting with the line, right? Or learning some new technique. And then I'm like, oh, wait, I haven't actually drawn eyes like that. You know, right? I found this new shorthand for eyes that'll work for my storyboarding, you know, and if you get so encompassed in the job demands, you don't always have that room to experiment or get better. It's not that you won't get better in your craft, but you know, I'm kind of one of those guys that's like, I want to have less to do, you know, and I want to make it as easy as possible. I want to be able to animate my shows, but I still want to go home, right?
Yeah.
Like, and work on my own projects. You know, but it's just me. I have friends who love to, like, they literally would be happy working till 3 or 4 in the morning on our animation shows, right? And
good for them. I'm not them either. I like to be out like on the dot. Like I will stay if needed, but like if I can be home, you know, because I like my kid, I like my comics. But what's interesting, I've also noticed that, and this doesn't, you know, this isn't to knock anyone who's on the reverse where they like to do that, because that's cool. That's cool that you enjoy what you do so much. But I will say I've found for myself, it actually ups my value as well, because I don't have like all my eggs in like one basket. I'm always working on other projects.
That's a really good thing, Josh. Like, that's something I've always, I think that's just my upbringing, you know, because my dad had many businesses, right? Like,
Yeah.
they were all pretty successful, but like they were all his hobbies. Like, he did this and he created a little business with it. No, it actually took off, you know? And I think I took some of that, and that I didn't want to just throw everything in animation. You know, maybe it's a mistake. Maybe I should have, maybe I'm much further in my career, but I wanted to, like, hey, I want to do music stuff. I want to do the movie stuff. I just want to make stuff. I want to tell stories. And
Yes.
me, that makes me happy. Right. And, again, I've been fortunate enough to have a career that really boosts that, you know, and surrounded by friends that, you know, these people that I've worked in this industry with for a long time are my best friends now. And we're all still competitively drawing against each other. Like, there's constantly still this, like, oh, you think that storyboard was good? Look what I did today. You know, it's like, oh my God, that scene's so great. Okay, I'm going to outdo that tomorrow. Right. Like, there's still that fun camaraderie and stuff. And I think that's really important too, if you're in an office environment when you're drawing. You know, and sometimes I don't get that with my comic books, right? Like, because I'm doing them on my own. So I do have to constantly share them with friends and like, you know, get their feedback and stuff. But
yeah, that is the hard
I'm
part.
needy that way.
Yeah, it's like, that is one of the benefits of working with a team. There is a rush when, like, you kind of level each other up. And then aside from that, there's this huge rush when you achieve something like completely impossible as a team that you're just not quite going to get on your own. Like, because if you're in like the art studio and you achieve something impossible, you're just like, woohoo. Oh.
Well, it's always fun to bitch with someone else too that's in it with you.
Yes. Yes.
It's that buddy cop feeling.
I adore that. Yeah. But that's cool. I do think I do think it always seems to be the case where, you know, when people are doing passion projects as artists, and, you know, I'm not saying this always works out, but it tends to, with most of the people I've known from art school and beyond, like, it tends to work out that way. Like, if you kind of pursue your passions consistently, even if, like, you know, you're fresh out of art school or something, your first job's like at, like, I don't know, like bagging groceries or delivering food or something, you know, like whatever it is. Like, I think if you keep at your passion and keep seriously inquisitive and trying to improve.
Yeah.
And then like, even when you get the art job, don't just don't just phone it in on that. Like, keep your passion alive, because that art job can
and I've done that lots of times. There's been many times where I've had to do, like, when I was first starting out, it's like, oh, okay, I got to do an illustration for a bank savings and loan, right?
Totally.
Like, we all had to do those. And for me personally, it was always like trying to find at least one thing in there that I can grow from, or whether it was just, okay, I'll try my technique, right? But it's funny, like, I go back to some of these things I drew, even back then, they're full of horror. Like, even if it wasn't meant to be, like, really, did I have to draw the old guy holding the money for a savings and loan? Like, he's this evil miser, you know? He's like, why did the bank accept that? Like, that was not working for them to open a savings account. But,
you know,
you always try to find something.
You know, maybe they had evil miser clientele.
Yeah, they're like, hey, that's our demographic. But, you know, you try to find something in it. So, I don't know. Again, talking about this now in hindsight, I kind of see choices that I made. I could see, like, oh yeah, actually, that was the choice that naturally geared me towards the things I do.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, like I said, don't say no to a job before you learn everything about that job, right? Because sometimes it's people saying, hey, would you be interested in doing something like this? And you're like, how, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can pull that off. And you've talked yourself out of it before they've even offered, before it's even a solid deal. And then, you know, you might even say no to that deal before they've even brought up money, time. Who knows? They might say, yeah, actually what we need if someone's going to lay it out for you, we just need you to take it to completion, and we're going to pay you 3 times what you were probably going to ask for, right? And you know, I've just learned that with all my mistakes along the way of how many jobs I've said no to, until finally I had a friend say, you know, don't say no until there's an actual offer of money saying you would need to start this tomorrow. The deadline is so and so. If you can't do it, then you're say, I'm sorry, I can't take the job. But if you said no ahead of time, you might have messed yourself out of something else. Because even then, I've had jobs with people where when that came and I said no because it wasn't the right fit. And I had that luxury because I had my day job of animation, right? Like that was paying the bills, but I was doing my side projects and someone offers me something. I'm like, that's not right. But I say that the last, you know, when the money's actually there. But by that time, I've built a relationship with this person and they're like, yeah, I see that may not be the right fit for you. Well, I have this other thing that might be more along your lines, right?
Yeah.
And then I would take that gig and it's like so much fun. And it's something that boosted my career, or, you know, and I've had several of those throughout the career. And, you know, you kind of learn from those of, you know, that can help guide you to what you want to do. But when you're starting out, you almost got to do everything, right?
Yeah,
and you're doing it almost, if not for free, next to free, right? Because you're just trying to get it started. You know, we all do that. I'm still. Oh no, go ahead, Gene.
I was just going to say that's a good point. Actually, Scott was just relaying a story because he was in the position where he was pretty much turning away all freelance work just because that's not what he wanted to do. And an opportunity came up, and at first he told the person it was through another contact, says you need to contact this guy about this project, and he was saying how it sounded like a comic book project, and he says, well, I want to work on my own comics, but he says, well, just contact this guy. And then through that interaction, it was just like you said, they got talking and showing some of the other work, and a whole different project kind of popped up, and it could be something, you know, potentially something big. So you never know. I mean, it is, you know, it really, like exactly like you said, sometimes just say yes, at least up to a certain point. You don't want to, you know. And
sometimes you have to say no just because you're getting screwed over, because there's, unfortunately, our industry, you know, everyone's who's an artist is trying to get those gigs. And if you cost too much, they'll go with someone else. You just can't have that fear in your head. I always say, I got to ask for the money, the amount of money that's going to stop me from bitching while I'm doing the job.
Exactly.
Right? Because if I'm sitting there going, oh, this is horrible, and I'm like, well, they're paying me good money.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm inspired again.
Yeah, exactly.
If I'm like, I'm giving them everything and they're giving me squat, and, you know, then maybe it's not a good job.
I have a friend who's not in creative, but they just got a better job, like, and are gonna put in their like 2 week or whatever at their current job. And I was literally talking to them today, and I was like, hey, you know, congrats and all that. But the thing was the thing they hated about the job that it was too corporate. And when I found out what they were getting paid to be in this like super corporate environment, I was like, oh yeah, that's like, if you're gonna have to be in like a crazy corporate environment, make sure they're paying you crazy corporate money. Like, I'm just saying, like, if you have to,
yeah. Well, at least know your market. Know your market. Know what the baseline is.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much now with the internet, you can look up any job and see what the mean is, right, for across the nation for that job. Now, if you're trying to start in, you know, you can't ask for Norman Rockwell money, right? But you can at least judge what you're worth. Now, I constantly do art still for next to nothing sometimes, because I just love to do it, right?
Yeah. Like for instance,
and they caught me at the right time
when
I'm inspired, and I'm gonna just draw something for the next day anyhow. So I won't do it for free, I'm saying, but I'll do it for cheaper. But, it depends on the job and when it is. But for the most part, you just got to know what things are worth and what that mean is. And again, depending on your day job and where you are financially and stuff. I can't tell you how many tattoos I've drawn for people, right? But some of those things, they're advertising. Someone's walking around with your art on their arm, and they'll say who designed that for them, right? And those things are cool. I think that's you should never undersell yourself, but you should know when opportunities are there, and how those things can work to your favor, and how they can propel you. Now, again, none of this has anything to do with horror. I'm totally off topic, but
I like it.
This is all good stuff, and we'll rope it back into that. But yeah, definitely finish your thought, because this is the Artcasters, and as much as we do want to talk about horror and Halloween and things like that, this is kind of the nature of the show.
And this is still with my horror art.
Yeah.
This is how I treat it, and since we're even talking about that, horror is not an all year thing for some people. Others it is. And I'm not at that. I'm still not at that point where I could be financially secure, I feel, just on my illustration work, alone. I'm fortunate in that I do have that job, and it is a job I love, and I've been doing for a long time, and it fulfills certain needs of me having to tell stories and direct and pick shots, and then I can come home and draw my fun stuff. But even with all those gigs, at least I couldn't live in California on illustration alone. I don't think.
It's a tough thing to swing.
Yeah, not when everything's 4 times as much as what it should be.
Oh yeah.
So you gotta have that safety net. But I have a lot of friends who've made careers out of just illustration alone, and or living in the Midwest and doing that, and that is awesome. And I get jealous of that a lot, because there's the freedoms and stuff. But yeah, I love to tell stories, and with the horror aspect, being out here in Hollywood area and stuff, it's like there's so much great horror here. You just go to Burbank, there's all these shops, the horror shops, and
there are some great horror shops in Burbank, man.
Oh yeah, well you
For
got
sure.
Dark Delicacies, Halloween Town. These are all plugs for these places, I guess.
Which
Creature
one's
Features.
the one with the that always has the doom buggy out front?
That's Halloween Town.
Okay,
I
that's
believe,
so
right?
cool.
So as somebody who hasn't been out to these shops, I do, of course, because I'm Gene Simmons and I live in the LA area. But somebody like Scott, who maybe lives in Arizona, when you say horror shops, I think of Halloween costume shops, but I assume that's not what you're talking about.
Well, it's a little bit of everything. They got, man, this is a good plug for them. They got costumes, toys, but even just shirts, enamel pins, everything kind of horror. But they also do art gallery showings, right? And I've been fortunate enough to be invited a few times. I've actually sold a couple pieces at their gallery showings, which are great, right?
That's so cool.
Yeah, in those, in going to shops like that for a horror fan, it's like you meet people in the industry and stuff, and I become friends with a lot of people at the stores, and they're like, hey, why don't you come in and do a signing or stuff like that. And then, again, it's networking and stuff. Not everyone, again, has that luxury of having a cool horror store nearby, but that's one of the fortunate sides of California, LA area, there's usually a store for something. Pretty much anything has a store and a fanatic fan base that's, you know, connected to it, which is great.
I love it. And I would say, like, just to plug like weird kind of horror type things in LA, this is just on a different note, but like there's a little museum called the Museum of Jurassic Technology.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
like, I would say, like, for like kind of weird, just off-putting horror feeling without real horror, it's such a great place to like go on a weekend or something and take a date with. Although I don't know if you
Depending
can
on the
even,
date. Yeah.
depending on the date. If my wife would be like all into that, but I don't know. I got to remember, like, my wife is an artist too, so I don't know. But yeah, it's like that's a good one to check out too. Yeah.
So one thing I went to in LA that it was a temporary thing, and I don't know if maybe David, you got to see it when it was in town, but there was a Guillermo del Toro exhibit.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was amazing. It was fantastic. That's like one of those things where you're just like looking at every piece of art he has, and you're just like,
Exactly.
It was awesome because it's art, right? It's in a museum capacity, but it's a lot of comic art. Like there's Richard Corbin art where I'm always like, you know, it's black and white line art, but he gets this almost photoreal shadows and stuff on the characters. And it's like, wow, you can actually get up there and see how he did it. And actually it's like, oh, I never thought of using whiteout to take out the negative space to get that look, right? And that was an amazing exhibit, plus all the costumes and the animatronics. And the giant Frankenstein head. So.
To think that was actually in his house. That's what's in his house that he had loaned out for this exhibit. I hope someday he'll get his chance to do Frankenstein because and that would be a question. I know we're wrapping things up, so I'm gonna ask a couple questions. We'll kind of go around the room, and if anyone, you know, I know Cory's not as big of a horror fan, so but the questions I want to ask are first of all, so like I said, if you were going to, because they've tried to redo the Universal Studios monsters several times and usually not successfully. Recently, they tried to relaunch as a cinematic universe. Who would you pick as far as which property, and who do you think is the best to handle that property? Or if you don't, maybe you believe that they should just be left alone. And you may answer the same question. You may have the same answer I do, but I would just love to see Guillermo del Toro do Frankenstein.
I want to do Bride of Frankenstein personally. I would love to see myself doing that.
You kind of answered my other question, which was going to be if you could do one project yourself.
Yeah.
And
it'd be Bride of Frankenstein or Creature from Black Lagoon. Those are two of my favorites.
But Bride of Frankenstein, because I love that movie. I'm just and maybe this is unpopular, I don't know, but the one thing I didn't really feel like fit with it and was the miniature people. Would you keep that in, and how would you handle that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I would try to be faithful to it, to be honest. I would find a way to fit it in, but I'm not personally one of those people into thinking that to reboot something or remake something, you have to put a new modern spin on it.
I think that's where they had the problems in the past trying to do
that. I feel like it's our modern technology, our capabilities of how to film, how to composite shots, how to tell those stories, maybe in a slightly modern way, but it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So it's got a lot of love and popularity throughout the years. So personally, I would keep it, but again, it would be my personal directing style. Like what I would love to see with remakes really is just go back to the source material let's use the exact same script they used, right? And interpret it how we would interpret that same script. Not like, oh, here's the cool twist at the end. The bride was actually the doctor all the time. It's like, we don't need to reinvent stuff or throw the audience off, right?
Yeah, and if you reinvent something that sucked. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
there's so
it's
many
like
good.
The rule of like when you're building a portfolio, if you want to do a cover of
there's so many good
like,
B movies, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, people call them bad movies. To me, they're not, because to me, they're actually some of the most inspiring movies I've seen. In that, I watched Saving Private Ryan. I can't necessarily figure out how they did the bullets coming through the water and all these shots. I watched some of these B movies. There's so much freaking passion behind it and creativity, and I can see what they did, but also what they did wrong, that I'm like, okay, when I make something, I gotta know not to quite do that. Don't do what they did. I can learn more from seeing what they did wrong as something to help you make it better. But there's so many great movies, like I would love to remake, from the 70s and 80s, and even things like Octoman, right? Like the half man, half octopus. How cool would that be with today's technology? How awesome you can make that freaking character, right? But still going full practical effects, I love it.
Yeah. Gary brought up a good point with the John Carpenter's The Thing, based on the original The Thing from Another World. So definitely, taking that source material, in that case, adding to it, and I think improving on it. But it's such a fine line between ruining something great and improving on it. So I don't know. It's just a real difficult question.
Yeah, it is, and people might go into it with all the best intentions, but making a movie, just from my experience on the one I've really done, is that there's a lot of ingredients going into the soup, right? They're not all of them are the best ingredients or ingredients you should have put in there, but it is what it is, and you're trying to make that soup the best soup you can. It's a horrible analogy, but I think you get what I mean in that.
That makes sense. I think the one thing I'd add to it that I think might highlight what you're trying to say is like, it's like you're making a soup, you're putting in the best ingredients you can get, and then every once in a while somebody's coming by and throwing in ingredients, and you're hoping those are going to mesh. And like, there's the fact that, like, I've never worked on a film. I've worked on like commercials and music videos, like very briefly. And I will say, just from that one experience, like one or two experiences of doing that, seeing all the different cogs that have to kind of work for this thing to even work, and then even seeing some of the shooting of it and how kind of haphazard it really is in the moment, where sometimes you have, even on like high budget stuff, you have people like holding like reflector sheets and stuff, like hanging off the corner.
When I was making mine, I was like, the whole time we were making it, I'm just like, any movie that actually gets made is a miracle.
Yeah. Right? That's what you realize.
And there's so many strong, and we're all very passionate, opinionated people, right? Because we all have a creative eye, and all of our eyes are different, and we see things differently, and especially a medium like horror. Because even within horror, there's cliques within horror, right? There's the people that love slashers, or there's the people that love the hardcore gore, but then there's the people that love the old universal or fun horror, right? And like for me, like personally, I love like Return of the Living Dead, right?
Yes.
Well, I just love that movie because it's horror, but it's fun, and it was a movie I could watch with friends, and but I have different classes. Like, I wouldn't put Return of the Living Dead there with The Shining, which scared the hell out of me when I was 7 years old, peeking behind the couch when my parents were watching it. That movie freaked me out. But to me, they're both horror movies, but you can't put them side by side. One's more psychological, one's more just visceral, and Sorry, I totally go off on tangents, but
That was great, though. You do good tangents. These are good tangents.
So Josh, what about you? Is there a property that you would like to see remade, and by who?
Oh man, I don't tend to like remakes too much, but
Okay.
but
Well, that was also an option.
but I would like any property or just specifically Universal Monsters.
No, well, I would keep it to something maybe more with a horror edge to it, but it doesn't have to be Universal.
Yeah, I mean, I horror movies that should be. The problem is, yeah, I might actually be with I might actually be with like the idea of like not really recreating them. I'd like to see more new stuff because like like for instance, one of the things that bugged me more than anything in the world was the remake of Psycho. Like that's a perfect movie and they remade it for no reason.
Yeah, why remake constantly the good ones? You know, and I see in the chat like Gary says, you know, remake some bad movie that has a neat idea in it. There's so many movies with great ideas.
So I do think like that. What was it? What was the one with? See, now I'm gonna forget it. But it's like they end up having to invade. There's these giant ants that end up. Them, yes, I think that would be a great one because they end up having to like go into the anthill and stuff, and it's like or bomb the anthill, and they bring like the military and stuff. I'd love to see that, and I think you could probably do a lot of stuff with like.
I'd love to see all the giant bug movies come back: Mantis, Spider, Tarantula.
Dude, that would be
giant claw.
So yeah, I could get on board with that for sure. Yeah.
So I guess I don't know, Cory, did you want to chime in at all, or?
I would probably do something weird. Like I think like remaking Psycho is stupid, but I think giving me the backstory of how he became a psycho is really interesting. And there was like that TV show.
Didn't they do that? I wonder if they did. I think they did that in a series.
Yeah, and it was I enjoyed it. I thought it was good because you knew where it was heading, but it was an interesting thing. So I think I would choose like I want to know the backstory of the giant squid that attacks, you know, the submarine in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Like why does that squid hate subs?
That would be a Disney film, right? Like
right. I mean, he's like Neptune's pet or something, and then gets ousted, and then is just really bitter against humanoids after that, you know, or some I don't know, you know, like I think the backstories, or I would love to see a really good version. Yeah, Bates Motel. That was the one I was thinking. I'd love to see a really good version of like classic literary stuff thrown together, like The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, because that movie was terrible, but the source material was really
that's fun. True. That would be really cool.
You know, or do like She, you know, I forget the guy's name, H. Rider Haggard. You know, that's almost a horror book, even though it's kind of wrapped in like a Lost World genre kind of Quartermain adventure thing. But a lot of the stuff that happens in it could be horror.
It's kind of pulpy stuff you're talking about there, you know, which is cool.
Yeah. But you know, there's still people melting because somebody's so beautiful, you know, or whatever, that type of thing. I mean, some of those things that are kind of more
Rangers and Temple of Doom had so many horror elements in it, right?
Right. Oh, I still am haunted by, you know, Kalima. It's never going to leave my brain.
The melting head, still a fantastic effect.
Right.
Yeah, like literally anytime I'm walking by an Ark of the Covenant, I just have to like if anybody's cracking it open,
don't look, Marion.
It's a common experience. They're everywhere now.
Yeah.
Anyhow. Wow, that's I think I just think the idea, the premise of remaking stuff is so cool, but also like don't remake the good stuff. But I like the idea of digging into like different characters, and I
like the stuff that's inspired by the source material, not the one that's like, I think you did that movie that did so well. I think you did it wrong. Let me show you how it's done. Right? There's a pretentiousness that comes with that people, it's hard to swallow, right?
Yeah, or even just the money grab of like, we're going to remake Miracle on 34th Street and do it line for line, except for the last line in the court case.
Well, wasn't Home Alone like they're remaking Home Alone or something? And
Right.
I saw there's a little stick that it's like the same movie.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
I mean, speaking of the bug genre, the giant bug genre, I would like to see a whole slew of movies that's based on something like that, which was basically like, dude, if I put my camera on the ground, this thing look huge. You know, that was the entire premise of those movies.
Right.
Like, look what I can do with a low angle.
Yeah, and they had a lot of B-roll. Yeah, you know, a lot of B-roll of like monsters, like giant, well, just close-up shots of bugs from like biology movies.
Like, how many jungle films did we see the same leopard walking through tall grass?
I do think it would be fun to do an authentic movie like that too. The only downside, it authentically like take a movie that uses like lots of B-roll and stuff like that. But the problem is, and this is what's great about B movies, it's really hard to fake. It's hard to fake a B movie, you know. Like,
again, it comes back to like, this is what I tell my daughter, because she's always like, oh, we're gonna watch more of those. It to me, again, it all comes down to the passion that wasn't making. To everyone involved in that, they weren't trying to make something that you're gonna laugh at, right? Like, they weren't trying to make something to make you giggle. Some of it was a money grab, but most of the time it was someone passionate without a big budget, trying to do something kind of cool, right? And I feel like the remakes that take those kind of things, you know, try to make fun of it a little, right? And or some people just put this comedic spin on something because it's become a cult film and it's been a funny favorite because of everything it had going against it, right? Production quality, bad acting, whatever. But that does nothing for me. I don't want to. I can make fun of a movie. I don't need to see you make fun of it for me. I would rather see you make it as serious as possible. I'll laugh if I think you did a bad job, right? I laugh at myself if I did a bad job. But you know, I just want to see things done like take the material seriously. The comedy will kind of come out of it naturally, I think. Forcing it.
So,
I love that.
I like what you said, David, about not necessarily doing a remake, but maybe something inspired by that idea. So that would probably be my answer, because one of my favorite, my favorite Universal Studios monster movie, at least from a character design perspective, and maybe the movie itself would be Creature from the Black Lagoon. But I like what Del Toro did with The Shape of Water. Not Creature from the Black Lagoon, but definitely inspired by it, but with a different take.
No, I love that kind of stuff, and that's what gets me excited, you know, to see a film and things, and you see what Del Toro inspired him, you know, or the things he's loved over the years, right? And to me, that's exciting and cool, and that's what gets me even excited about directors, when you know what inspires them and what movies help shape what they made and stuff. You know, that stuff's always really cool.
I'd like to see more books and movies made in the same way that Shape of Water was made, because they were like playing tennis and they talked about this idea. And then Del Toro was like, this is the next movie I'm doing. I want you to write this book, but I don't want to talk to you until my movie's done and your book is done. And so off of a conversation they had on the tennis match, these two creative projects went completely different directions, but still had like the same skeletal structure because of that conversation. I'd like to see a lot of that. That was a really interesting, rather than like the novelization or the adaptation. It was like, here's this germ of an idea, and then they kind of go off and just make it.
I wasn't aware of that. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, the book is good.
All right. So we're about our hour and a half mark. And it's been quite a while since I've promoted anything. But I'm also going to give everyone else a chance to promote whatever they're working on. So, but before we do that, is there any last word, anything that somebody wanted to get in here on the topic of our, why we love the season of Halloween or horror? Anything else that anyone wanted to add before we start to go around the room and promote anything we have that we're working on?
An excuse to buy candy.
Yeah, I love it.
How many of us eat all the candy bars, before that night? Like,
Well,
well,
the dad-
the kids,
it's
they
the
get
dad
all
packs, man.
the mounds.
So in an effort, I mentioned this on the other show that I was on, but I'll mention it again here since you brought up candy. And as you know, I'm always looking for an opportunity to brand something with Kiss. Candy is one of those things that I've been having a little bit of a problem because of the Hershey Kiss is trademarked. So I can't really go in and make a Hershey or a Kiss candy bar. So that's one of those things that has eluded me, but I'm still working on it. But definitely, it just pains me to say this because I like to put Kiss on everything I can possibly get my hands on. But that candy, especially around this time, it just bothers me that we can't have a Kiss candy bar. So I don't know. That's one dream project I would certainly like to work on. But if you're having a Halloween party, I just wanted to mention this. Or if maybe you have only a few weeks or maybe a year to live, I wanted to mention that we have a Kiss coffin. It is a full-size coffin, and like I said, if you are perfectly good health and you don't need a coffin right now, it also doubles for a nice ice chest. And if you're doing a Halloween party or something like that, so definitely check that out. It's only I think they're selling for the low price. It's $75,000. So definitely pick one of those. It's autographed by all the current members of Kiss, and it's a really like I said, whether you're using it for funeral arrangement purposes or just for a showpiece, it's an excellent product. So definitely check that out. So Josh, is there anything that you want to promote?
Oh my gosh. I want to promote my friend Scott Serkland, who, Gene, you'd be impressed, but he's actually pretty good at doing a Gene Simmons impersonation. I recently found out, so you should talk to him.
I don't think I'd like that. I haven't heard anyone do any good Gene Simmons impersonation, because the minute I hear it's like, no, I don't sound like that. So
yeah.
But,
yeah, well, give him a shot. I'm just saying, and check out his work at serpworks.com, and definitely, make sure you guys are supporting our friend Scott, and then also, if you guys are bored and want to pick up a comic, buy 2 stories, book 1. That's a great pitch line. You can tell how
I got my copy.
Oh, really?
Awesome.
Oh,
yes.
Thank you. That's awesome, man. I'm excited about comics in general, so I'm kind of eager to see what a little bit of. Well, we saw a sneak preview of something that we don't know yet, so we'll have to see. But I can't wait to see that on out. All right. Guess Cory. Yes.
Cory, what do you have to promote?
Well, I started making fun of something, and that was the horror movie that I saw today. Was Facebook's live stream about the metaverse and how they're going to jump into augmented reality. So if you want to see me predict the future about 4 days ago, go watch the most recent animation that I posted on YouTube and Instagram about the animated parody news talking about the metaverse. Anyway, now I've got a lot more material for this project that I'm working on. But anyway, yeah. If you want to see, just a creepy humanoid cyborg talk about how he's going to take over the world and have everybody cheer him on, it's kind of like Uncanny Valley meets Force Ghosts, in a video game that everyone is going to abandon their physical lives for. So
I watched a little bit of that, and on your recommendation, Cory, and it seemed to me, maybe it was just me, but or maybe it's just the robotic nature of Zuckerberg. But it seems to me that not only him, but everyone else on the show, it seemed like, although it was live, it seemed like everything was scripted.
Oh, it was super scripted and really awkward, and none of them are actors. So just imagine like software engineers and project managers trying to pretend like they're not acting, and they keep stepping on each other's lines and everything.
So this is like the modern bad movie, right? Like,
oh yeah, the modern bad movie. I just realized as you said that the modern bad movie is executives trying to pretend like they're normal people. That's the modern B movie. The budget is just inverse, so they have billions of dollars to do really crappy looking stuff. Anyway, if you want to see me mock that occasionally and try to convince you not to get into wearable tech, you can go to CoryKerr.com and go look at, I don't know, EndoExo or the Animated Parody News or a couple of Journey Pooh. Those are all relevant to today's announcement.
I love it.
All right. And last but not least, we're going to kick it back over to our guest, David Hartman. So, David,
yes,
where can people find you and anything? You showed something off briefly. I don't know if that's
I can mention some of it. Like, I got several things coming out. If the end of this year, early in the next year, there's a few things. I did 2 board games. They're like board card games for Trick or Treat Studios.
So cool.
One's called Blood Orders, which is like a vampire game, and then another one called Troll Fest. And each of these I drew hundreds of illustrations, like cards in there. I did those. I got a comic I'm working with Steve Niles and Shannon Eric Denton. I'm thinking for Image. I'm hoping that'll come out in the next year, but they'll announce more of that. And then I got my TV shows that I mentioned earlier. So yeah, quite a few things. But
are the wax packs something that you're going?
Oh yeah, I'll show those because I haven't released these yet, but I'll announce it here. I'm going to be doing these kind of wax packs. They're going to be a little pricey because you get a sticker. And I got 2 different packs. There's one that's mutants and one that's monsters. These are mutants, which are some of my favorite. Like,
so amazing.
Like the Georges, or Dr. Mutagen and, Torque Whipple. So you get these, but in addition, there will be a blank card that I do an original piece on. So you would get an original piece of art. And I'm only making, a small amount of these. But man, it's like actual wax pack. So
that's so cool.
Pretty cool.
I'm a huge fan of those wax packs. So
I know you are, and you've inspired me, my friend, because I saw your video earlier, and I'm like, that's really cool.
Well, let me know when those are available.
Yeah, I will. I'm slow.
All right, and as for me, once again, I'm Gene Simmons from KISS, also known as the doctor, also known as Dr. Love, also known as the God of Thunder, also known as I go by many names, the Demon. But you can find
that guy in Runaway.
Yes, definitely Runaway, where I played a mad scientist building like kind of what Cory was talking about, as far as robotic creatures that chase after and hunt people down and become sentient and all that.
We should remake that.
Absolutely, as long as they hire me to reprise my role, because otherwise there's really no one else that could play that role to such a incredible degree. So definitely you want to check that out. Also starring Tom Selleck, not quite the performance that I did, but not too bad. Great movie. The fact that I didn't win an Oscar for that is baffles me to this day. But definitely check out Runaway. It's available maybe on streaming. I don't know, or you could buy a DVD or something. But yeah, you can find my stuff, but pretty much everything at at KISS Online. We, like I said, we're doing our final tour. Number of different products. We've done comics in the past. We've done, you know, everything from animation to, I'm hard pressed to think of something that doesn't have the KISS brand on it. And
Candy
I
bars.
would suggest, if you have to mortgage your home or whatever the case is, get as many of these items as you possibly can. They're great investments, and you will be enjoying life, even if you spend your whole life savings on them. So definitely do that. And also, so this show, as I'm filling in for Scott Serkland, usually he does this, but I'll do my best to explain what the show is. So this show is the Artcasters, usually hosted by Scott, Josh, and Cory, always with another guest that comes on. And in this case, it's David. Next week, it'll be somebody else. Or actually, next week is a big show. It's the 300th episode, my understanding, of the Artcasters. So
Wow.
definitely going to be there for that. You don't want to miss that. And the problem with YouTube is they don't always alert people when new things come out. So what you want to do is there is a link in the description of this video. Definitely click on that link, join the mailing list, and you will be sent, usually about 30 minutes beforehand, a link to the show, who the guest is going to be. And like I said, next week is going to be a big one. So you want to be there for that. But yeah, just click on that link, and they don't spam you or anything like that. They usually, all they do is send out a notification about 30 minutes or more ahead of time. So you can click on that. You'll know what the topic's going to be, who the guest is going to be, and all that. So definitely do that. And I just one more time wanted to thank everyone in the chat. We had quite a lively chat today, and wish everyone a happy Halloween. I wanted to thank David for coming on the show. And hold on, I've still got that on there. Let me take that off. There we go. All right. Yes, so you can see everyone's names. Definitely follow David, his information. There's clickable links in the description of this video. I assume Josh set that up. So, and if you haven't already seen David's work, definitely check it out, because it's just amazing stuff.
Yeah, inspiring.
Thank you.
And yeah, so definitely check that out. And don't forget to be here next week. It'll be on a different channel. It'll be on Scott's channel, but that's why we do that whole, the newsletter, so you know which channel it's going to be on, because it bounces back and forth. So it'll be on Scott's channel next week. And again, just wanted to thank everyone in the chat, and we will see you guys next week for the 300th episode of the Artcasters.
Wow.
Well, I won't see you because I won't be here. I will be doing much more important things: touring, making money, putting my KISS brand on any possible merchandise I can think of. So that's what I'll be doing. But Scott will be back next week, along with Josh and Cory, and at least one special guest, if not more. So be there for that. And everyone's getting their costumes back on. So good night, everyone, and thanks for being with us for another Halloween episode. And more than likely, hopefully it won't be a whole year until we have David back on, but we'll probably try to keep this tradition up. So hopefully he'll be back here in a year.
Yeah,
and before
that would be
as
awesome.
well. All right. Good night, everyone. Happy Halloween.